So I think it's really important from people, because I've made a couple of posts on Twitter lately and people don't understand where I'm coming from because they don't understand how this fraud actually works. So I think it's important to start there. So this cryptocurrency boom has been brought on by greedy speculators. And so what happens? So basically, Sam Bankman-Fried has two companies, one called FTX, which is the exchange where you can buy and sell them all. And he has another company called Alameda. And Alameda is something called a market maker, or you could call them a faker or a manipulator. So market makers trade on thinly traded volume to artificially create a price. So what happens is, and Sam Bankman-Fried actually gave an interview, and it's on Bloomberg. It was in April of this year. And he breaks all this down. Let's say that you create this box. It's just a box. You say it's going to change the world, but all is it a box. And then you put tokens in and take tokens out. And so then this market maker starts trading this volume on very, very thin liquidity to artificially create a market cap. So they take 100,000 tokens, they take 2% of them, and they quickly wash trade them back and forth between themselves to then say these tokens are worth $2, $5, $100. And then you say, well, $100 token times the total market cap gives it $1 billion. So they create $1 billion of potential value out of thin air. And then what happens, and he describes it in this interview, is then because they've made this market and they've made this token look like it's growing in value and it's worth all this money, then they list it on FTX, and all these people want to start trading it because they perceive it as having value, the value they gave it artificially. And so then everyone starts trading it, and then FTX makes all the money off these unsuspecting people trading a bunch of worthless garbage.
And isn't FTX like what I call the COMEX? All it is a platform.
Yeah, it's like an E-Trade, or something like that, right?
And, I've been tweeting that I'm still bullish on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But don't consider silver and the silver ETF the same thing.
That's exactly right.
And Bitcoin is not the same as Sam Bankman-Fried.
Yeah, so that's the first part. And I think it's important to understand. And as I said, I have firsthand knowledge of this. So one of my really good friends, someone I used to work with, actually launched a token with Sam Bankman-Fried and Alameda last year. And basically within 2 months, hired a couple developers. Alameda gave him $12 million for this token that he made out of thin air at about a 3 cents valuation. And they flipped him to their VC friends at 9 cents, 12 cents. And then VC dumped him on retail at 26 cents. So venture capitalists love this because they, typically venture capitalists would put money in and they wouldn't get money back out for 7 to 10 years. Like if they invested into Uber, for example, real money, a real company, 7 to 10 years with no liquidity. In this crypto market, they could put money in and instantly within 90 days or 180 days get a 10x or 20x return on their money. So it's brought hundreds of millions of dollars from venture capitalists, which then brings hundreds of millions of dollars into advertising and media. And so this whole crypto thing has been built up on fake pump and dump, right? They're creating fugazi, they're creating vaporware, and the VC loves it because they can 10x or 20x their money instantly. And then they use the media to build it up. And so everybody thinks they're like life-changing technology, but the reality is 99% of it is all nothing.
So I'll go back to my question again. Why they're so strange looking? I mean, I hate to say, I can't get past it. I mean,
well, look at the Ponzi's, or I'm sorry, the Patsies throughout history, like the Lee Harvey Oswalds. Aren't they always a little bit strange looking?
Yeah, they're strange looking.
Well, greed, right? Unfortunately, people, they get blinded by greed and they want that, and they see all this money being made in this gambling space or this lottery space, and so they all want to jump in. But just because Sam Bankman-Fried did obvious fraud, obvious scam, obvious lies, now it's going into bankruptcy court. They have the same bankruptcy attorney as did the Enron case, which of course Enron was like the largest scandal ever. He said today that he believes this is the worst he's ever seen in his entire career.
Who, the Enron guy?
Yeah, the Enron attorney who's working on the FTX bankruptcy said this is the worst, most fraudulent case he's ever seen. So, for example, FTX was bringing in all this money through Alameda and through FTX Exchange. I'm talking, hundreds of billions of dollars. They had no ledger or accounting of where the money came from. Everything was commingled in one account. customer funds, investor funds, remittances, payment, everything was commingled in one single account, and they had no accounting or ledger to even decide who was owed what. They had no list of employees. There was no human resources, no list of employees. So they don't even know if these employees are real or not, or if they're fraudulent. All expenses were done over like instant messenger Slack, and they would approve invoices with just an emoji, like happy face. Yes, we approve it. Like no kidding. I mean, it was this bad. And then they use Signal, which is a very private app for communications. And they use Signal to hide most of their communication so that no regulators would even see what they were doing. I mean, this was a fraudulent organization from the very beginning. And so, you can't blame Bitcoin or crypto for this. This is an operator who did something criminal.
That's like blaming the silver ETF.
Right.
And I have a lot of silver, a lot of gold, but I don't have anything in ETFs.
And you don't blame silver for that, right? It's the ETF operator. And then what they did, and this is where it starts to look pretty bad for the Democratic Party or the powers that be, however you want to frame that up. But it looks like what they were doing, FTX, and why Jim Cramer called him the JP Morgan, is they went after and took down the largest cryptocurrency company. So they were responsible for the Terra Luna takedown, which was $60 billion that got eviscerated in May of this year. FTX did that. Then they went and took down Celsius. So Celsius was a really large, we call it a CFI, or centralized finance exchange. They took them down. And this took out, we're talking about tens of thousands or millions of people who lost their life savings. They went and took them down. All right. Then they took down BlockFi. And what they were doing is they went to BlockFi. So BlockFi is a place where people would send their cryptocurrency in exchange for loans or in exchange for yield back. And they took them down. And then they said, hey, here's what we're going to do, BlockFi. We're going to bail you out, but we're not actually going to give you any money. What we're going to do is we're going to guarantee your customer deposits, but you have to give us all your money. You have to park your money with us. So they were pretending to bail people out, but stealing it. And that's why Cramer called them the JP Morgan, because they're supposedly bailing these companies out.
So Mark, once again, they're pretty smart dudes, but they're criminals. They're very smart. I can't handle it. My brain doesn't think that way. I just couldn't do that.
Yeah.
How far is this corruption going, Mark?
Well, it goes pretty far. So Sam Bankman-Fried, he has a hyphenated last name, Bankman and Fried. And that's because one of his parents is Bankman and one of his parents are Fried. Right. And the reason why he decided to keep both of them in hyphenated is because both of his parents are pretty well known, pretty famous in the political circles. Right. So they're both professors, law professors. And his father and his mother, both kind of specifically around tax law. His father has been lobbying and writing papers to end cash, to get rid of cash, and to find ways to enforce tax policy and things like that. They're also both what they call bundlers, which means they collect lots of money and then donate that money to super PACs, right? To Democratic super PACs. So they're massively involved in the Democratic Party and politics, both in writing policy, in influencing policy, as well as raising money for the Democratic Party. So that kind of starts there. We know that his aunt works for the World Economic Forum, and John Hopkins, which of course ran the Pandemic 201. That was the event previous to the pandemic happening. So that's his aunt. His brother also.
The World Economic Forum is Klaus Schwab, right? Klaus
Schwab at the World Economic Forum, yeah. Which of course, SBF's company FTX is a partner with the World Economic Forum. Right now, we're just talking about his family. So his parents, his aunt, his brother also is part of a think tank and a nonprofit pushing, pandemic and COVID policies. And so Sam Bankman-Fried this week came out and said, the worst part about FTX going bankrupt is how are we going to save the world from the next pandemic? Like that's how blind he is now, right? So that's kind of it from a high level. And so a lot of people would say, well, how did he get here, right? Who put the money up for this guy to kind of build this up?
His girlfriend, her father is some professor at MIT or something like that, or
yeah. So her father,
he's way up there also.
Yeah, her father, Gary Ellison, is from MIT, which he worked under Gary Gensler, who's the head of the SEC.
Jesus.
So, of course, Sam Bankman-Fried and his girlfriend Caroline, for that runs Alameda, were very, very cozy with the SEC, Gary Gensler, as well as the CFTC. So he has hired many, many regulators from the CFTC, which is the governing body of the Commodities Futures Trading Exchange. So he's hired lots of them. He's donated lots of money to Maxine Waters. Maxine Waters is,
another strange-looking
supposed to be in charge of the oversight of this. So she's been seen in multiple pictures. He's donated lots of money. And then this is a little bit drawing at straws, and so I don't have facts to back this up, but where there's smoke, there's fire. And FTX was founded right when Biden announced he was going to run for office. FTX became the second largest donor to the Biden administration. They donated $40 million of stolen funds to the Democratic Party for the midterms. And then, of course, when this whole Russia-Ukraine situation came up, and regardless of what the facts are behind that war, we know that wars are always a way to funnel money from taxpayers into their pockets. Very quickly, there was all this groundswell movement of let's get the people involved. And so then people wanted to donate money to the Ukrainians, and they were donating money through cryptocurrency. And of course, FTX opened up, and we'll take all that cryptocurrency and we'll donate it to Ukraine on your behalf. So now there's deep ties with Ukraine. How much of that money was being funneled, or should we say washed through that situation? So massive ties to the Biden and the Democratic Party, massive ties to the regulators, Gary Gensler and the CFTC, massive ties to Ukraine and the World Economic Forum. It is as dirty as this can get.
Jeez. I also heard that Ukraine also invested in FTX. Money came back. And so a lot of that money we sent for weapons came back to finance FTX.
Right. It looks like it was like this big circular, they are washing it through that system. He's like, he's like, whatever, right? Like, okay, I lost it. Like I could have made it back. Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, came out 2 days ago, which I tweeted about. And he said, I would invest into Sam Bankman-Fried's next company. Like, wait, the guy who led the biggest fraud, who literally, he stole over $10 billion. $10 billion. Robert, think about this. $10 billion. That's tens of thousands of families who lost everything. People's lives are ruined here. To him, it's just a couple of numbers on a keyboard. Oh, $10 billion, whatever. No. We're talking about tens or hundreds of thousands of families whose lives are ruined. Now, will the Democratic Party give any of that stolen money back? Most likely not.
So Kevin O'Leary has been endorsing SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, for a while.
Yep.
Why would he do it? Why would he risk everything? Why would Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, keep sticking his neck out?
Yeah. What's interesting is somebody like Kevin O'Leary, and I don't know him personally. I did sit on the news desk with him at the Bitcoin conference last year, so I did get to hang out with him one-on-one, but I don't know him. I would just think after watching Shark Tank that he would do some due diligence before he would invest into these companies. And so when you look at what the bankruptcy guy from Enron is saying, how bad their books are, how bad things are run, there was no records, there was no nothing. How could Kevin O'Leary put money into a company like that? And now it makes me have to rethink, him and everybody else who was invested into these deals. They also got Tom Brady, poor Tom Brady and his wife Giselle. They invested a massive stake. We don't know exactly the dollar amount. They invested a massive stake in FTX. That's all gone as well. This is a big, big problem. But the bigger problem is, like I said, the ties to the WEF, the ties to the Democratic Party, stealing $10 billion worth of families' life savings, and then the midterms just taking it all away.
How much, let's get down to, Tom Brady, he can make that money back. O'Leary can make that money back. What's going to happen to the millions of people who, bet the ranch on a fraud? What's going to happen to them? How long is it going to take for them to get any money back?
So, in the elections, there's polls, but then there's also like betting markets. And the betting markets are typically way more accurate than the polls are, right? And so there's a betting market going on, and it's, will SBF be federally indicted by the end of the year? And 75% of the votes say no.
Right.
No,
that's why he's offshore.
he won't be indicted. So, yeah, I mean, he's indicted. I mean, yeah, he's offshore. So it's a Bahamas corporation, but there's also FTX US. They also have the only U.S. regulated derivatives exchange, and he's an American citizen.